concerns, independent living market, as well as other topics. Before we get going on this very first panel, which I'm excited to dive into, we're focused this morning on smart home platforms and the role that platforms play in simplifying the user experience. But before we get started, I do want to again thank our sponsors who have made it possible to move our in-person events to a digital platform. We're so appreciative of your support from Alarm.com, AmTrust Specialty Risk, Plume, as well as Airties. Thank you all so much for your sponsorship. So the simple truth is, when you think about the smart home, there are many paths to the smart home and a wide variety of experiences that consumers have based on what devices and systems that they have in their home, how many they have, what they use them for, how they set them up. Parks Associates data reveals that U.S. consumers living in households with broadband internet have, on average, 12 connected devices in their home, ranging from computing to smart home to appliances to entertainment devices. Nearly 1 in 5 broadband households own a home control system. 28% have a security system that's professionally monitored with smart home control capabilities. 49% now own a smart speaker or smart display. And about 6% tell us that they own a smart appliance, major appliance of some sort. As households accumulate more devices across a variety of device types, achieving any sort of unified experience becomes more difficult, but also more compelling if done well. We also know that about 50% of smart home device owners do have an app that controls multiple smart home products. This may be through a security system app or another unifying app that controls multiple products from a single control interface. The other 50% either are unsure what they have and how they're accessing their smart home products, or they're just using different apps for individual products. Now, the share of consumers with a unified option has been growing slowly year over year, driven by interactive security services, smart speakers, and more modestly, growth in home control systems outside of security. But our panel today will address the growing role of platforms in providing that elusive, unified experience in the connected home and smart home, the shifts in the smart home landscape this year, and innovations we can expect on the horizon. We have a fantastic panel of industry leaders who are working on the smart home experience and from the platform perspective every day. So I'd love to bring them into the conversation and have them each introduce themselves and introduce their companies. Let's start with Ann Ferguson, who's the SVP of Information Technology at Alarm.com. Hi, Ann.
Hi, Jennifer. And I have to laugh, one quick correction, because some of my colleagues would be horrified to know that I was promoted or maybe demoted to head of IT. I'm actually responsible for marketing at Alarm.com. Definitely more my swim lane, but
sorry about that.
Not at all, not at all. Huge thanks to Parks for hosting this whole Connections event and for the opportunity to have a conversation this afternoon with, or this morning rather, with a group of fantastic women across our industry. Alarm.com is one of the leading platforms for smart home and business solutions. We've been around for about 20 years at this point, and we've got several million subscribers across North America and currently in 44 countries globally as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anne. Thanks for being here today. Next, we have Say Pike, who's the CEO and founder of IOTAS.
Hi, everybody. I'm Say. I'm the founder of IOTAS, as Jennifer just said. So you got my title right, yay. But IOTAS stands for IoT as a Service. Fundamentally, we do fleet management of IoT devices into multifamily homes. We work directly with real estate developers and owners who are our primary customers, as well as telcos and ISPs, to white label our solution to be part of their overall package bundle solution for these multifamily homeowners.
Wonderful. Thank you, Say. I'm glad to have you and IOTAS here as well represented. Next, we have Raya Sevilla, who's the SVP of Information Technology at ADT. Hi, Raya.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Raya. I'm actually slight change in title, Senior Vice President of Product at ADT. For more than 146 years, ADT has been the trusted name to help protect our customers, their loved ones, and their belongings in many ways. We've expanded to not just a professional install, but as well as a DIY and a monitor and a mobile solution for all residential, small business, and commercial customers.
Great, thank you, Raya. And noting your title change as well, congratulations. Okay, and then we also have Sumati Stewart, who is the SVP of Sales and Marketing at Yonomi. Hi, Sumati. Sumati, you're there we go, on mute. Now we can hear you. Great.
Can you hear me all right?
Now, yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So I'm Sumati Stewart, and I'm the SVP of Sales and Marketing at Yonomi. And I was just admiring the fact that we have an all-women's panel today, which is something pretty rare to have. So this is pretty cool. And also the fact that I know some of these women from before. So we were having an interesting conversation before we started the panel. But yeah, I'm the SVP of Sales and Marketing at Yonomi, which is a startup. We just did get acquired by Allegion, which is something we will talk about in a little bit. But we are focused on cloud enablement and device interoperability. We currently integrate across 300 devices of about 35 brands. And we are helping solution providers build solutions for property facilities management and energy management. Nice to join the panel.
Great, thank you, Sumati, and thank you all. We are also so thrilled that we're kicking off Connection Summit, the Connection Summit Day, with an all-female panel, wonderful female experts and leaders in the industry. So thank you all again. So we know that we're coming off of 2020, an incredible year of disruption that certainly continues into 2021 to consumers, to their lifestyles, their habits, their patterns, their needs. For businesses as well, of course. So I'd love to start off with understanding from your perspective how this past year has impacted the smart home space and in particular consumers' mindsets and their spending, their pocketbooks. Anne, can we start with you?
Sure. Well, as you said, I mean, 2020 had certainly did not go the way any of us might have anticipated. We saw a fairly brief slowdown in the business just as things really started hitting the North American market. So back in March and early April, but we're really pleased to see things rebound quite actually remarkably quickly. Consumer demand for security and for smart home services has frankly been as healthy as we've ever seen. I think driven by the fundamental need for security that so many of us have felt, and even thinking about security in different ways, right? The security of someone coming to your door is an entirely new experience now than it was a year ago. And consumers are increasingly showing us through their purchases and their behavior that they're looking for ways to better protect themselves and their family members, both when they're away from home, which is not that often these days, but increasingly one of the shifts we've seen is to greater utilization of features that we've developed over time for really helping to make life easier when one is in the home. So whether it's something like scenes or unexpected activity alerts, which can work inside the home or outside the home, it's been very gratifying for us to see consumers really start to gravitate towards using more of the holistic smart home experience while they are in their homes. So that's been exciting. And then certainly features like video analytics and the doorbell have really skyrocketed. I think we've all seen that across the industry. And then I know one of the things Ryan and I had mentioned the other day was the really surprising but very strong growth that we've seen out of the SMB and like commercial space as well. And I think as the patterns that business owners have experienced have really been so disrupted over the course of 2020, it's caused the need for constant connection to your place of business. When you're not there, you might have new employees, new hours, and the ability to easily change up access has become more, that needs become more prevalent than ever before.
Yeah, interesting. Ryan, are you seeing the same things, from your perspective, the same types of shifts to more usage in the home and maybe new demand from SMB, or where are you seeing the real impacts of this past year on your business?
Very similar to the sentiment of Anne, where there is increased usage of devices in the home that used to alert customers when they're not in the home of unexpected events. Now that they are home, they are using their devices more for, let me call it convenience, right? The ability for one of our customers to be able to turn on and off lights while sitting at their desk and just, using voice assistants. We're seeing an increased usage of the devices that are in the homes, as expected, since they're home, children are home, but also we've not necessarily surprisingly, but the increased number of outdoor cameras that have been purchased is actually also fascinating, not just through COVID times, but also the socio-political times that we're in right now, and the increased number of outdoor cameras that have been asked for. Related to not just for peace of mind, but also for convenience. Like as Anne mentioned, like delivery is my Amazon guy here, is my UPS guy here. So that's also quite a fascinating shift relative to the times that we're in. And relative to the SMB segment, the SMB market is also experiencing quite a bit of growth, because I don't necessarily know if folks realize that the SMB segment employ approximately 43% of all Americans. And so consequently, that's the peace of mind is not just required for in the home, but also in your business and wherever they happen to be, whether or not they're out by their trucks, or they're out in their pizzerias, or whatever their small business happens to be. And so the peace of mind needs to be extended, not just in their homes, but also in their workplace. So the shift relative to where we are now, the safety of the customers, the safety of the employees, it's not just health related, but also peace of mind across your residential as well as your small business.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, Parks Associates did do a survey of SMBs late in last year, so pretty fresh perspective, and we did find that SMBs are investing in Wi-Fi technology because they're having to move around their landscape, right, to distance, and have customers in their facilities, or in a waiting room or an outside area for the first time, and really change their layout. And then also this idea of premise security and feeling like they have the business itself and their employees secure. So we're certainly seeing that from our end as well. Say, let me turn to you. When you think about not only the disruptions of this past year, but when we think about platforms and the way that people come to smart home, right? A lot of folks do still buy point devices for a specific need, but we have seen year over year some more interest in a platform type unified control experience. What do you think is driving that, and what's the real value of and role of platforms to play in that smart home experience?
Sure. I think the number one role is just the ease of use. It just works at move-in, right? And so we primarily focus on, as I mentioned earlier, multifamily communities. And so broad communities have already been set up. And so when early adopters who are primarily renting right now, and there's a stat of they move 11 times before they turn the age of 40. And so that's one of the things that we saw, was that the biggest barrier is the initial setup, installation, pairing, provisioning, and then uninstalling everything, packing it up, and then moving with it. And so when we really wanted to kind of focus on what the right user experience was, we really wanted to have it just work right out of the box. You move in, everything's set up from you, lights, thermostat, lock controls, open close sensor, things that help with peace of mind as well. And on top of that, all the voice platform also just works as well. So you can easily say to your voice assistant, turn the thermostat to a certain degree, turn on a scene like movie time or good morning, etc. And so minimizing the actual learning curve, I think, is one of the critical things about what a platform solution can do. And then all the kind of added benefits of the security, automatic updates to all of your system versus just one endpoint solution. So I think that's one of the key things from a user perspective that makes it super exciting. from the owner perspective of the multifamily, the apartments or student housing or senior living, whatever it is, it actually allows for them to have great visibility into what is working, what's not working within their building. So the ROI of their investment. So what kind of device is being used? What is device usage like? Is smart home usage tied to a longer retention of residents or faster move-in of residents or rent premiums? And so those are all the benefits that a platform really brings to the market.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. I think that we have a tendency in the smart home industry to focus really heavily on that single family individual home. And MDU space is so interesting. I'd love to just follow up with you there on, from the property manager, property owner's perspective, do you see the bigger driver being these operational efficiencies and the increased management capabilities kind of across their property? Or are you really seeing that they can charge those rent premiums, or attract a different type of renter or elongate those contracts because there's demand from the resident side?
All the above, and I think it really depends on the type of building. If you're a Class A, high-rise, brand new, you're already at top of market rent, right? So what you're doing is you're trying to move people in as fast as possible and then retain those people. And so they're seeing that, and also prevent things that may damage a building. I mean, we've had buildings that we prevented leaks that could have caused millions of dollars of damage when the leak started at the top floor and just floods all the way down. And so we've had really interesting experiences there. But also, if the single family home rental market is also really taking off. And if you look at single family home rental market or garden style or mid-rise style, those are usually slightly lower in rent. They're seeing actually huge rent bumps when they do upgrade with smart home solution packages, along with any other sort of like renovation projects. And so they're seeing, again, a little bit faster movements, but also about 2 to 3 months average longer retention of residents, and anywhere from 3% to like 10%, 11% rent bump.
Wow. Incredible. Thanks for sharing those stats. Let me turn to Samadhi and make sure I bring you into the conversation here. I really love your perspective too. You mentioned Eunomy's covering, I think, 300 plus brands, right? You touch a lot of different players in the ecosystem, bringing them together. Can you talk from your perspective about, the role of the platform in the smart home user experience right now? And like I said, we have seen some growth year over year. Are things shifting where consumers maybe are not buying point devices, or even if they are, they can still get a unified experience through a platform play, after the fact?
Oh, thank you. Yes, Jennifer. I think one of the biggest things, as you understand, we're dealing with a very digitally native population, right? Mm-hmm. These are folks who've grown up with technology, right? So their expectations of technology are more than just point-to-point devices, right? They want more than just being able to turn lights on and off, right? They expect the same kind of experiences they get from their phone. They want them to be contextually based and not just about devices and brands. And by the way, Eunomy integrates across 300 devices and 35 brands. Just want to make sure that it wasn't 300 brands, but devices across those brands. And I think really in order to drive adoption, we need to provide them with seamless, easy to use, easy to manage experiences that both address pain points and bring joy into their life. And I think that can be done in three things to focus on. Shay focused on some of the stuff around ease of install and interoperability, right? Because that's key. Unless you're a technophile, you buy these devices, and it's really, unless you're having somebody like an ADT or somebody else do an install, one of the biggest detriments for DIY is that it's difficult to install these devices. It's difficult to have them work together because, again, you want to have those experiences, right? Not just being able to do one thing, but really kind of build that out, which is where, Eunomy helps, because we do have a platform that integrates a number of devices. So being able to bundle them together and being able to create those experiences that solution providers can provide. The second piece is context, right? So in order to really harness the power of smart home, I think context is key. Knowing who you are, knowing where you are, knowing what you're doing now, knowing what you're going to be doing next. I mean, those are really important to be able to give the right personalized experiences to customers. But those have to be then delivered proactively, both at home, on and in the car. So some of the things that will enhance that, I think, is device-to-device integrations and anticipatory computing through AI and ML, right, which will be able to really kind of provide those experiences to people. So, what is right for Jennifer may be different from what's right for me. But in addition, I think some of the other advantages, like edge computing, at the local level. So being able to provide things like, for example, when you're in your car, experiences that are going to be faster responsiveness and lower latency will also enhance those experiences. And finally, I think it's really key to understand that consumers are really digitizing their lives. More and more of our lives are digital now, right? We are actually digitizing them. They're being stored somewhere. And I think it's really important to focus on security and privacy so they feel comfortable, and so they feel like, okay, I can jump into this, I can do this, and my information will still be secure, so I think those are important things to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of the things that you spoke to really hit on some key pain points that we think consumers have still in the smart home. One is things just working together, also certainly privacy and security concerns. Let me come back to Raya. When you think about what you're trying to do with your products and your services this year, what pain points are you really focused on solving for consumers?
So Samadhi and Say hit on two or three of them. One is the setup and onboarding needs to be much simpler. As Samadhi says, the DIY aspect is actually not as simple as we would all like it to be. And so even on the onboarding and the setup of the devices, even on the professional install side, we have to make it simpler, not just for the customer, but also for our field technicians to do so. Time in the home, I'm pretty sure our customers don't appreciate us being there all day. And so the simpler we can make it for the customer, the simpler we can make it for our technicians, I think would be a benefit for the industry as a whole. The interoperability is also something that we should tackle. Right now, there is a burden on the DIY customers to understand what protocols, Zigbee, Z-Wave, and all the other jargon that we use, and we assume that the customers understand what the jargon means, and a lot of times they don't, and it's almost unfair to them that we bring them into that maze for them to figure out and unravel what they do need, what they don't need, and oftentimes they come home to realize it's not quite compatible. So the interoperability should be solved on the back-end platform and not necessarily on a burden on the customers to figure out if their light bulb needs to be Zigbee, Z-Wave, or whatever the technology happens to be. And also, and Sumati hit it, and it's something that we're going to focus on. It's the contextual and anticipation to make the smart home, let me call it convenient, very convenient and very helpful. And the fact that and make the entire setup of that smart home simple. So the fact that I have to tell my voice assistant 3 times to turn on the light in 3 different rooms as I go throughout my house to turn on the lights is not necessarily as convenient as I'd like. And so if a little bit of anticipation, leveraging the data that's already been collected and secured in backend servers, I think would actually be great and fantastic for our customers because it'll just make the home more convenient and helpful to them. So there's quite a bit of hardware and protocols that we need to ensure is not necessarily compatible with each other, but for the most part operates well with each other. And then also using that set of information during setup and make it convenient for the customer so that it becomes natural to them, as opposed to right now it's a little bit of an unnatural experience because we have names that we did not give these voice assistants. And consequently, and also the phrase itself, it's like, my favorite voice assistant, please turn on bedroom light number 1, is not necessarily a natural speech. And so to make it a little bit more natural and to give it some sort of anticipation so that it's not creepy, will actually, I think, will be beneficial to the customers and our industry as a whole.
Yeah, that actually speaks to a question that we've already gotten in from the audience. And so that is a nice reminder for those who are watching. We do have a questions tab. You're welcome to put in your questions as we talk, as well as there's a poll tab. And we have a poll that we're going to get to in just a minute here right on this topic. So please go ahead and put in your responses there. But the question that came in was it just works objective is nice. But how do you do that across different smartphone and smart speaker platforms? So you may have multiple smart assistants in your house and you're having to call them out to do different things. So is part of the answer to your point, Raya, if across these platforms, my needs are understood and anticipated, or I can perhaps suggest which is my primary that I want to make the decisions first and foremost, right? Part of that answer that more of this needs to be pushed to automatically happen and less driven from asks from the user.
Yeah, so there's a lot of technologies, and I think we need to pretty much land on certain business rules that are either set up by the customer or we set up on behalf of the customer that they can change on their own once it's been set up. That there are certain technologies, for example, a lot of these devices know which device is closest to the person at this point. So for example, my various voice assistants in the house know which voice assistant is closer to me and consequently respond accordingly. So we can leverage certain technologies that already exist to make it beneficial to the customer. It's the gap in customer experience that we need to solve to make it simple for the customer to set up or for us to set it up on behalf of the customer, but make it simple for them to change it. So I think it's the next evolution of relative to the various technologies in the house, because the great news is it already exists. And so consequently, this is the further incremental improvement to just make it simple and make it work. And for the most part, the various partnerships with companies pretty much help facilitate the ease of use from a customer perspective. And we just need to set up that experience and concentrate on setting up that simpler experience for the customer.
Right. And back to you. Are there specific pain points that you are focusing on Alarm.com? Is it ease of use? Is it setup and onboarding? Is it privacy and security and proactively addressing those concerns? What's your focus on this year?
Yes. Is the answer. Definitely focused on all of those. And I think the other panelists have very eloquently covered the need for a more simple and streamlined setup initial setup process for a consumer. And particularly when, as your data noted, the average consumer's now got at least 12 devices. And probably that's only going to continue to grow. We all certainly hope that continues to grow. I want to underscore a point that Raya made, though, because a significant focus of our R&D efforts is around trying to ensure that the installation experience for the technician, for the installer, is great, right? We talk about consumer pain points. That technician is a consumer as well. And if they have a good experience, a fairly easy experience that allows them to get things set up, get on to the next appointment, stay on track, that makes things easier all the way around. So I think trying to, as Raya noted, make sure that experience is as easy as possible is going to be critical. I think the other thing that's important to note, and that is a big area of focus for us as well, is beyond the initial installation, we all, I think, want for consumers to continue to add to their systems over time. So how do we reduce the friction in that process? And it's a combination, I think, of educating consumers, right? And there frankly is a pretty significant lack, I think, of education available for consumers to be able to understand, okay, if I now want smart lighting and I've got an existing system, what does that mean? How can I get something that's going to work? So I think there's a real opportunity there. And then for us to also consider, what does expanding the system mean? And I think a great example is, now that we have got a pretty robust video analytics capability, I have an opportunity to think about sensors in a very different way. I don't necessarily need a contact sensor on a door in my home to know every single time it opens. I can use a video analytics tripwire to be able to tell me when there's activity around that door. So in a sense, I'm getting an expanded system without having to add hardware to it. And I think there's some really nice opportunity in features like that to be able to help us create an expanded ecosystem of features for a consumer that's easy for them to enable, and it doesn't necessarily require additional hardware, and as critically doesn't require a truck roll.
Yeah. Well, interesting. In our poll, we did ask our audience, what consumer experience is most likely to drive wider adoption of systems and endpoint solutions? And there's a tie for first place here on the answers, although it's coming in dynamically, so they're changing a little bit. But essentially, frustration with interoperability issues and quest for convenience and ease of use, which of course go together. So sounds like those who are attending this panel are agreeing for the most part with our speakers. Say, I want to come back to you on the topic of the personal assistant platforms, right, which do provide some kind of level of user experience versus the type of platform that IOTAS and others are providing, right? How do you differentiate the value? And I think in the MDU space is actually pretty clear, but I'd love to hear from you, of a platform like you provide versus unified experience at the user interface level that might be being provided by the voice assistants. And actually, we did also have a question specifically for you from the panel around this. Can they provide comment about Alexa for residential and how they see that enhancing the end user experience? So a lot of interest in what this looks like in the MDU space.
Yeah, so I'm glad somebody asked that question. So we did make an announcement with Amazon where we're working with them on Alexa for residential for MDU space. And what that really means is that typically these voice assistants need end user credentials, right, to actually make it work, meaning that you have to log in as an end user with your Amazon account and make that work. What this means, though, is that we can do fleet management of all the Alexa devices that go into any large building or a community and allow for any sort of interaction without having that end user information. So there's a lot of interesting things from a data security perspective, from a data privacy perspective as well, that allows for any resident or prospective residents to tour a building, tour a property, get information about that property, like of how much is rent, how much is pet deposit, what's a typical utility bill like, and so on, and be able to book reservations for, I don't know, the kitchen in that community or something of that nature without ever having to associate yourself with the questions being asked. And so that's where for fleet management of those devices, it's a very interesting new way to look at it. And also from interaction with IoT or smart home devices, it allows for you to be able to control those devices without, again, having to give your own personal credentials. So when I mean by earlier of like it just works at Move-In, you walk in and you don't have to give credentials before everything just works. There's scenes and routines that you can just tell Alexa to run, and it does what it needs to do. Same with Google as well. Google's definitely right there along Alexa, but we do not have yet an incorporated fleet management version of that right now.
Interesting. Well, thanks for talking through that announcement. There's been some really interesting partnerships that we've seen happen over the past 6 months and going forward, especially at the point of device makers, device brands, and platform or service providers coming together. One of the big ones that was announced last year was Google and ADT coming together. So I'd love to get your perspective, Raya, on that announcement and that partnership, what we can expect going into 2021. And one of the announcements, from my understanding of that partnership already, is next generation smart security platform play, right, with Google devices and such. So can you tell us a little bit more about what we can expect coming out of that partnership this year?
Yeah, so beginning this year, our customers and future customers will see increased interoperability between our service offerings and a Google set of products. But beyond just the hardware and leveraging certain hardware, it's also working towards the simplified user experience we've all been advocating on this call, and the interoperability of those various hardware through routines and automations and schedules. The ultimate goal is for us to create a seamless user experience, potentially leveraging new protocols such as CHIP. But the end goal there is going to be a seamless customer experience that's not just helpful, but also convenient. And so beginning this year, our customers will start seeing us roll out certain integrations with Google and taking advantage of the various technologies that Google provides, from their voice, from voice to video analytics to their cloud platforms.
Mm-hmm. So what's interesting is we did have a question from the audience related to what the panelists think of the big tech players and whether or not they're threats or opportunities, right? Obviously, here, big opportunity for the coming together of Google and ADT. What do you think about how ADT works with other big tech players, going forward, as they also have a really important footprint in the home?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, interoperability is going to be key. And we have customers that have Amazon products in their home. They happen to be Alexa users, and I might have just triggered mine. Sorry. And we've got customers who are Google, and so consequently, it's the interoperability of the devices. And for the longest time, ADT has been has taken advantage of Z-Wave protocols, but we are going to now broaden our horizons to say potentially the CHIP protocol, the Zigbee protocol. And so that's where we are very mindful of the protocols that we're using, what we've deployed in the customer's home, and we don't want to strand our customers. We want them to come along in this journey with us as we simplify their experience and make it simple for them, simple for our field technicians, simple for our customer care agents. And so we're very conscious of that experience all the way around. I like to tell folks that I have 3 customers. It's our end user customers, our field technicians, as well as our care agents. I have to care for the simplicity of all their experiences. So interoperability is key, because we are not just on one protocol. We are on several protocols, and we don't want to strand our customer base.
Yep. Well, so also, another big announcement or partnership that we can speak to, especially in the platform space, is Yonomi's acquisition by Allegion, and you've got a strong player in the device side coming together with the platform side. Somebody, can you give us some perspective on that partnership and what you're looking to achieve and why that made sense?
Great question, Jennifer. Yes, so the announcement with Allegion acquiring Yonomi was made last week, so it's pretty new. But yes, absolutely. So as we know, and that Allegion is focused on building security devices like locks and access control. And as you mentioned, Yonomi has a smart home platform, that's enabling integration of devices. So by the way, Allegion has been a customer and an investor in Yonomi for quite some while. So they've believed in us for quite a while. So it's actually a pretty good marriage. We will continue to actually support. They will be using our integration to be able to power a lot of the residential and commercial solutions. And but at the same time, and again, one thing to really notice about access control through smart locks, that's going to be kind of a hub to provide connectivity to other devices within the home, and getting to be quite an important entry point for both single-family homes as well as in the multi-dwelling unit space. In addition to that, though, Yonomi gets to be a business unit of itself, right? It has its own P&L. We are agnostic. We will continue to support new and existing customers. But I think having the scale of an Allegion with us, their devices, our platform, would be a compelling value proposition moving forward.
Okay, thank you for expanding on that exciting announcement from last week. So we have just a few more minutes. We have a ton of audience questions, so I do want to get to some. Some we may ask the speakers if you're interested in responding to via email or something after the fact, but I'll try and get to a few. So one is pretty interesting. What do you see as the key business drivers, services, or use cases that can shift industry focus of interoperability beyond network connectivity, installation control, to a platform level of interoperability that extends data sharing and control to partners, for example, safety, insurance, comfort, energy, water savings? Any thought on the sharing of data, right, to enable additional use cases for others in the ecosystem? Perhaps I can call Annan if you have any particular thoughts on this one.
Sure, and that's something that I'm sure all of us on the panel have had conversations about over the last many years. You know, from our perspective, it's fairly simple. We want to provide as much utility to the consumer as possible, but only in a way that allows for the consumer's data to be protected, to be absolutely protected, and in a way that they are comfortable with. So I think that requires a very, very strong degree of acknowledgement to the consumer of what's going to be shared and allowing them to opt in and out of things that they might not be comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think from
go ahead.
sorry.
Okay.
Actually, I was just going to add to that I think that is very fair that we need to protect consumer data, but at the same time, the data should be anonymized, so you know companies are able to harness insights from that, right? I mean, I think data is key, and to improve a lot of these experiences, you know, solution providers need to understand what is being used and how it is being used without it necessarily, you know, being specific to one user or another.
Mm-hmm. And Say, you had some thoughts you wanted to share there?
Yeah, and if I understand the question correctly, I think from an MDU perspective or a building perspective or property perspective, shifting information, as Sumati was saying, anonymized, aggregated, what you're getting is a potential of anonymized, aggregated data across hundreds, if not thousands of users, right? That allows for, yes, the safety, insurance, comfort, and energy savings partners to be able to analyze that data and look at the integrations across the cloud of what we do, for example, and other platforms out there do, to take that data and be able to actually use intelligently across, again, hundreds of, if not thousands of users for that particular property and location, and integrate that with other data sources that they have. And so I think what we're all getting at in some ways is the ability for us to look at a better, smarter, interoperable system that goes from energy to insurance. And be as simple as like, hey, leak has been detected in a certain area, you know, shut off the water to that building or something of that nature. And, or it could be as complicated as there's a fire in a building. Is there presence in that building, right? How many people are in a particular unit for emergency service responders to get into that building? So I think there's some really interesting things that's going to happen in the future. But more and more, the whole point isn't, as our earlier panelists said, turning on and off a light, but the ability to take an entire system and make the whole building, properties, and eventually cities around us smarter and more efficient.
But I think we do have to Sumati's point, we do have, and says we do have to protect our customers' data, especially since it's individualized. And for it to be useful, there comes a point when the data has to be individualized and not just anonymized across a bigger mindset. So we do have to work towards transparency of not only what data do we have, what data do other companies actually want? How are we using the customer's data? How will they be using the customer's data? And the customer has to opt into all this.
Yep.
And we have to respect the fact that if the customer does not want to opt in, just respect the fact that they don't want to opt in and they want to keep the data to themselves. So there is a bridge that we have to build to make our customers more comfortable with sharing data to various partners whoever they happen to be, and what data and how it will be shared. We do have to be transparent to the customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Keeping that customer's trust in anything relating to the connected home, personal assistance, anything that you're sharing, personal household patterns and data. And especially, we haven't talked much about this use case, but as we see more connected health use cases come into the home, earning and keeping consumers' trust is absolutely paramount. Well, I want to thank you all for your fantastic insights. We are at time, and thank you to the audience for your questions. We will be back with our next panel starting right at the top of the hour, whatever that means for you here in Central Time. That's 11 o'clock. So thank you, Raya and Say Sumati, very much for kicking off this Connection Summit at CES Day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, all of you.
And so up next at, again, 11 o'clock Central Time, we have a fireside chat with Silicon Labs. And then following that, we will have a panel on home services maximizing the value of connectivity. I'd like to thank again our sponsors, Alarm.com, AmTrust Specialty Risk, Plume, and Airties, as well as the various media and industry organizations that are supporters of this event as well. And of course, all the companies who are speaking throughout the day. Looking forward to our next session that's coming up at 11. If you're not aware, Parks Associates actually has a series of events throughout the year. We are going to be virtual throughout 2021. And so we are going to have virtual sessions all year long, not just at the times that we would normally have our in-person events. So our Connection Summit, our Connection series, looks at the smart home industry and what's going on in that market. Connection Summit is this today, always co-hosted with CES. We have a Smart Energy Summit community that's looking specifically at home energy management and the crossover to energy provider and utility business. Connected Health Summit, a lot of movement, a lot of change in the past year on the connected health space. We'll be talking about that all year, as well as changes in the entertainment services space as OTT online video services continue to grow and change and offer new services, a lot of what that means for the pay TV industry. So thank you all. We'll see you back.